Hello, everyone. This is Abby. I am the founder of Viewpoints. To many of you, I'm a friend, a family member, someone you met along your travels. Whoever I might be to you, even a stranger, I hope you enjoy this positivity project I've been working on called My Viewpoints. Essentially, it's revamping my former blog about my travels to be more community focused, bringing together stories from people all around the world, all different backgrounds of overcoming a comfort zone, whatever that might be. So for the actual website itself, you may have noticed that this positivity project, My Viewpoints, is essentially aim to have people share a story around achieving a personal goal or being on the path to achieving one. This goal, again, consists of stepping out of your comfort zone, whether that is being the first in your family to attend college or even starting your own business if you have a history of that. It really just depends on what your goals are, what you are working towards, and how that may inspire someone else, whether you know it or not. A little more background on myself for those out there who maybe haven't met me in person yet, but my name is Abby. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky in the United States, where I lived until about 18 years old. I then attended school in the Midwest, graduated actually back in 2015, where I also did a little work out in Denver in art education, and then moved to Boston, where I lived for 3 years. I just moved from Boston to Thailand in February. So over the past decade, really, I've been very mobile. Also with a study abroad semester in there in Italy. So for me, my comfort zone and what that meant was geographically traveling, escaping sort of what I knew as a familiar place and continuously going beyond that bubble. But it's meant other things as well. Some of the things that I feel have been most outside of my comfort zone have been anything from a project like my music hobby on the side to this blog. If you can't tell from how many times I've said so far, this is outside of my comfort zone. There it is. I have always wanted to start a project that was more focused on giving back, that would be impactful, and I never knew what that was. In fact, I'm still figuring out what it is now, but due to recent events, having really moved abroad and gone beyond my comfort zone in a way I've never done before, and also through a few other occurrences, losing a friend recently in a tragic accident and such, have led me to believe that if there's any time for this, it's now, which is why I am beginning this project in memory of that friend who did pass away, Kirsten Koch. She was a role model for positivity, really amazing person and teacher, friend, you name it. And this project is inspired in her legacy. If you haven't checked out the website yet, I've just added a Q&A section that might help provide a little bit more information on the project, whether or not your story may be a good fit for it, and also just a little bit more around the idea of escaping comfort zones, what that can really mean, and some examples as well. So make sure to check that out if you're at all curious. It may help answer your questions, and if not, I'm obviously here to help, whether you reach me through the website, email, the social media channels. It's all listed in one of those formats. So the last thing that I'll add before diving into our first Spotlight Saturday story is, well, why in the first place I'm even recording audio. I know a lot of you out there are maybe busy on a commute, don't always have time really to read or to sit down and to flip through a story like this, especially considering quite a few of these stories are going to be in long form writing. And so in order to make this as accessible as possible for your schedules, for your technology, for whatever that might be, I've decided to record audio of each of the stories going forward. And these will be available as I'm still figuring out either on the website, maybe on Instagram TV, definitely on the Facebook page. So stay tuned on that, and let's go ahead and start. I'm excited to introduce our very first Spotlight Saturday story. Our author this week will be Barbara Winnard. She's the author of a blog called thebabybloomer.blog. And it's a funny story, actually, how I found Barbara. We were both member of a Facebook page. There are a few out there for female travelers, digital nomads, etc. And actually found her willing to write a story through social media. So that really shows the power of connectedness through networks online, if anything. And I'm excited to share her words because I am very impressed, and I feel her story will really hit home with a lot of you out there. 50 years ago, I needed to wonder the world. Surprise! So does my own kid. It was 1970 and my first trip to Europe. My parents accompanied me to the airport, and as I was in line, headed for the plane, my mother said, "If you're not back in 6 months, you'll never see me alive again, and my death will be on your hands." Flabbergasted, I turned to everyone around me and asked, "Did you hear what my mom said?" They all wisely averted their eyes. My parents survived that trip and many others. In fact, my mom lived to be 100 years old. So maybe I enabled her to live longer because she was curious to see what I would do and where I would go. And of course, my mother, like most mothers, would often tell me that someday I would feel the same way when I had children of my own. When I look back at it now, 50 years later, and with a 27-year-old daughter, I think that my mother did have reason to worry. In those days, there were not many young women in their 20s traveling alone through Asia, North Africa, and South America. This was all unfamiliar to her, and Stone Age communications did not help. Back in the day, I would call collect every Sunday at 10 a.m. their time from wherever in the world I was and ask for myself, signaling that I was okay. I sent postcards, which I still have, yellowing in large scrapbooks, and very, very rarely I would send a telegram saying that I had arrived safely somewhere far away. I needed to travel, even if it upset my family. My mom lost 2 children to polio 3 years before I was born, and she held on tight to me because she was never sure where her losses would end. But I needed to get some distance and to overcome my own fears, one of which was that I would be called upon to fear the world along with her. Traveling alone was not easy then, nor is it now. And there were certainly times when I was alone and ill, sequestered in an awful room at night, too uncomfortable to be out on the streets by myself in some pretty shady places. I think that I reached the nadir when I was doubled over with stomach cramps in Indonesia, trying to get to the airport and asking for help from a group of missionaries who refused me. And yet, the feeling of accomplishment I had when I returned home, the joy I felt when realizing what I had done, nothing in my life compares to that. I would happily have traveled with a friend, but no one I knew wanted to go where I did or how I did it. As I told my daughter years later, you can't wait for someone to share your travels. Either you go alone or not at all. And my relationship with my daughter would never, I insisted, never, be like my mother's and mine. The last thing I wanted to do was clip her wings. I carried William Blake's poem in my heart. He who binds to himself a joy does the winged life destroy. But he who kisses the joy as it flies lives in eternity's sunrise. I sold the joys of travel to my daughter from the time she was a tot. First, we traveled around the United States, and then, when she was 2 years old, my husband and I took her to France, then Ireland, then Poland, then Mexico. She enjoyed traveling, and when she was in college, she took a semester abroad in Prague. She got a film job immediately out of college that required her to work in many different countries: Russia, Mexico, Sweden, and eventually in places in the Middle East. The films she worked on included stories about the drug trade or the faulty jail system or political extremism. I was fine with it. I told myself she was always with a film crew and she always had people from that country to help with transportation and translation. When some of the places she traveled to ended up in the news because of bombings or State Department warnings, I tried not to dwell on the dangers. My daughter has traveled alone, just not in the way I did in my day. She lived for a year on the opposite coast, and recently she decided to move by herself to a European city for a year. I worry about her when she is near, and I worry about her when she is away, but I trust her intelligence and wisdom and always support new experiences for her. I can see how she has blossomed from every trip, every new country, every opportunity to talk to people and to see for herself what the world is like. Because travel changes people. It did me, I'm sure. Overcoming fears, taking a chance, trying new things, they all expand our understanding of ourselves and of the world. I do find myself thinking about how I've always proselytized for travel. I ask myself, has the world changed for women who travel? Does familiarity with a country from online research and chats with friends enable women to feel or be safer when they travel? Or do they think that they're safer because of technology and are therefore less on guard? Does the political climate around the world add to the dangers of travel for women? Or are they merely publicized now more than they were? My mother was right. I worry about my daughter. But I would never tell her to stay put because of me, nor do I want her to. I share her difficulties and setbacks, and I share her joys in what she discovers. I hope that travel gives her hope in the world and the ability to navigate its fascinating depths and shoals. Kiss the ones you love, wish them well, and let them follow their own paths. That's the best way to show love and to retain love. Thank you, Barbara, for your amazing words. Your story truly sets the bar high, and very happy to have you on Viewpoints. If there's anything you take from this, whether you felt you could relate to Barbara or not, it's that your story does matter. We all come from unique places with unique experiences, and because you may not find your own story inspirational doesn't mean that someone else won't. It might be what they need to get them through a dark time in their life or to inspire them to take that extra step or go the extra mile to achieve something great. So please, if you're listening and you're considering joining this project, know that your story matters and that I would love to feature it. If you have any questions, contact me again, social media, email, website, you name it. I am here to help, and I am so excited to continue this. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us on Viewpoints. By us, I mean me, because it's just me here in Thailand. Thank you, and keep the stories coming. I've received a few so far for future Spotlight Saturdays, and honestly, at this rate, I'm looking to maybe spotlight 2 or 3 a week at least. Well, that concludes the very first Viewpoints audio series here, introducing you to the project, really what it is aimed to do, to accomplish, and of course, sharing our very first story from Barbara. Thank you to all for tuning in and hope to see your stories soon. Thanks.